Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. In this roundtable discussion, I have a conversation with Scubaboard members Glenn and Gordon about their thoughts on solo diving. If you are enjoying the show, please consider leaving us a review on your podcast listening platform. Thank you. Okay, today we have a special edition of Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast. About a month or so ago, I approached the infamous Scubaboard and I asked if we could get a discussion going on about certain topics in diving, and the one that came up first was solo diving. So I want to have my guests introduce themselves, and then we will get into the topics of solo diving.
Okay, my name is Gordon. I've been a diver for over 30 years, and I solo dive frequently, having done sort of 2.5 this week. I lost my buddy today, so that counts as half.
Hi, I'm Glenn. I've been diving actually a mere 12 years. Started off later in life, which was something where I just almost cursed myself for not actually starting this much earlier. Came from sailing, so always been around there, and got in, did a paddy at a resort place, which is fantastic. Paddy's great to get you into it, and then sort of went back to, this was in Spain, went back there later. Did my advanced, so that was cool because I'm advanced now, and went on, and then went to dive in the UK, and then just discovered I'm neither advanced nor know anything, and my the conditions are so different from what I had experienced in the Mediterranean. It's like, oh my goodness, and as a result moved on, and literally that first dive I realised just how important self-reliance was, and that to me was the critical thing. Self-reliance meaning for kit and all of yourself. You have to be prepared to deal with everything yourself, and not rely on others. If others are around, which is great, then fine, but that's it. Anyway, now moved on, CCR, which is great, what we colloquially call Mod 2, and which is down to 60-70 metres, so that's 200 to 230 feet, and loving it. Got an awful lot of good wrecks around the UK coast where I normally dive. So that's it.
Awesome. So you bring up a point that I wanted to ask. Do you think that there is a misconception between self-reliant and solo diving? I believe that there is.
Well, I've done the PADI self-reliant course, which was maybe 10 years back, I think. It was not long after they introduced it, and I asked somebody an instructor that I knew if he taught it, and he got all the literature, and I did the course. I found it very useful because I used to carry a 13 cubic foot as a backup when I'm a photographer, so I'm frequently on my own. I'll go out in a boat with half a dozen other people, jump in the water, and then I'll see them again when I surface. But I move very slow. I mean, I could probably spend an hour in the area that my bedroom covers if there's a lot of interesting critters around, and I'm sort of looking for nudibranchs mainly, but other macro stuff. Other people are into big things, and to be honest, there's a lot more small things than there are big things. So when it comes to photography, if you want to finish a film, as I used to take photographs with film cameras, you'll do it a lot quicker taking small objects than you will swimming around trying to find a shark or more eel or whatever. But I just get absorbed into the photography side of things, and people could be drowning next to me and I probably wouldn't notice. But as I said, I took this course. I took this course, and the instructor that I'd known for quite a while, he sort of said, "You'll never get to the surface from 30 meters with that." Well, I proved him wrong. I mean, my sack rate is extremely low. I'm pretty well chilled out underwater. Nowadays, I do take a 30 cubic foot stage which has 50% in it. Some people would argue that's not a bailout because it's too deep at 30 meters to use it. I says, well, if anything happened, that's what goes in my mouth, and I start to ascend. I'm not hanging around at 30 meters. So solo diving, self-reliant, it's another name for the same thing, really. You've got to be self-reliant to solo. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I did solo diving as part of my moving through the technical training. So after, I always wanted to do deeper and more, I would call it more interesting dives. So specifically wreck diving really interests me. Lots of reasons for that, not least I really enjoy the flora and fauna, but of course obviously there's the engineering aspect of it, and just the fact that they're so big or small or whatever, and they've got such amazing technology that just represents the history of engineering almost inside it. So you just look at, I don't know, the difference between a propeller on a First World War steamer compared with, for example, the propeller on a First World War battleship or something. You'll see so much difference between them. Amazing. But the solo diving was just really a quick course after I did my normoxic trimix, because everything's all there, and it was just a natural thing. I did a solo diver course, so that's the SDI one, and it's not a course in my humble opinion. It's simply a confirmation that you can actually do all of the skills and drills. My instructor, who's well known, grilled me in a way that was the best fun I've ever had underwater. Literally, it was done in a diving lake, which alas is no more. But basically had to sort of demonstrate skills all the way through. And part of this was done actually blindfolded, whilst I lost my fin. Suddenly, miraculously, a fin disappeared, and then you're suddenly there's air gunning going on, and oh my god, a load of rope drops on top of you, and you have to deal with this, and all the time holding your buoyancy. Sure, you've got touch contact with a ISO container thing next to you, but you still had to move around. And then you'd free yourself, and you have to triage your problems as you're doing it. Things would be whatever. And it was just brilliant to be able to do it. And then at the end of it, he said, right, I'm going to tap you on the shoulder when it's over, and then I need you to actually go up and do a stop for 3 minutes at 5 meters or whatever, so 15 feet. And of course, you can't see because you're blindfolded, which is the best way to do it. So there's no using of your gauges and things.
So how did you work that out? How did you work the 5 meter stop?
I went up. I put my SMB up after again another ton of rope was dropped on me. It's funny how it was following me around. So you sort of get out of that one. You have to launch an SMB, which was fun. Which I did, so that went off, so there's not a problem with that, and you sort of hold it, and now you've got, and it was a spool one as well, which is interesting. Anyway, so the way it was I knew I was, okay, it's not deep, it was sort of 9 meters or something, it wasn't deep, but that wasn't the point, it was going through the whole exercise. So I thought, right, if I do about 4 turns or 5 turns, that should be about a meter. So you sort of count it up and you kind of feel it on your back, because this is the point of doing solo stroke self-reliant diving. You need to have the experience to be able to do it. It's not the number of dives, it's the fact that you can actually tell the difference and actually hold a stop as well to a certain extent. You're holding on to your reel, your spool or reel, but you don't want to put too much weight on it, because you don't want to be highly negative, because that's just as bad. So then you just sort of count in your head, think, just wait for a bit, and that's that. It looked all right, and then just slowly surface, and yippee, with a massive smile on my face, because it was just such fun. You have to pay good money for that kind of thing. But anyway, it was good fun, and it was just really, to be honest, it was just going through all of the skills that had been done in every single, I don't want to say technical diving course, but it basically is, you have to be able to do shutdowns, behind you. It was a twin set. You've got to be able to switch over, deal with crap as it comes along, and think as you're going, and that's the main thing about it. So that's how I started with it, and of course this just moves on. Now I'm still doing the same kind of thing. I'm not interested in the ticket per se, but it is it's only ever useful in one small place that you can dive, but you can't dive CCR solo, alas. But anyway, that's it. But my solo diving has moved on with CCR as well, same thing. And it's only up to you, and you have to deal with everything that you have generated with it. Relying on others is not something I like to do. Anyway, I know it's down to the individual, but that was my opinion.
No, I like that. So a little bit of my story. Well, before I go into my solo diving, when I think of self-reliant, I feel like you could still be in a buddy team in a group, but be self-reliant. So that's what pops in my head when I think about self-reliance, as opposed to solo. There's no team, you're actually just out there by yourself. And I've done that quite a bit. So I will be honest, shame on me. I do not actually have a self-reliant or solo certification, because I believe there's only two certifications that are two agencies, which is PADI and STI. But how I started solo diving was, I started diving I got my certifications in Texas. And as soon as I got my, certifications, instantly hooked. We have a big lake. I don't know if you're familiar with the Austin, Texas area. Big lake, Lake Travis. Quite a bit of diving, actually. But I was looking for, I was not really pumped on the job that I had, and I was looking for another job, and there was a job at basically a dock company. So, we would maintenance the docks, we'd repair the docks, we'd do a lot of underwater work. And of course, when we were getting paid to do underwater work, my boss would pay us double time. So generally he would only say one diver at a time in the water. He didn't want just loads of us going down there. At the time, looking back on it, I'm like, okay, this wasn't very smart of me, but I'm just like pumped to be in the water. I'm like, okay, let's just jump in here. So I got very comfortable with myself under the water, just really knowing myself, not kind of pushing the limits, and just keeping myself safe, or so I thought, safe at the time. I've never ran into an incident, but it built my confidence, falsely probably I should say, because I was going and doing a lot of these dives by myself. I was working underwater. It was more of a working diver, so there's really no buoyancy. There's no nothing. Like, you're literally planting yourself on the bottom, you're doing some stuff, and then you're shooting right back up to do whatever you need to do, grab some more tools or whatnot. And so that led to me actually, one of my favorite things to do in Lake Travis. I kind of hate to say this, but I used to prefer to go out by myself, because there was never in Lake Travis we have some pretty low visibility. Generally like a good day, maybe 5 to 10 meters. It's just...
Oh, that's fantastic where I'm from.
Yeah. And there's always just, I know there's team procedures and going out and practicing with the team to always stick together. But me, generally just diving with newer divers, or kind of like people that I just met, like, oh, let's go out on a dive. It was just, there was always a lot of, I don't want to say I was babysitting, but it just kind of felt like I was always doing stuff. Whereas if I go out by myself, I can go at my own pace. I don't have to worry about anybody. And, looking back on it now, I'm like, okay, I could have been more safe, having more redundancies and things like that. So, and as we were kind of chatting about this offline, when you're at the beginning of, I don't want to say your career, but your diving, story, there's so much that you don't know. You think you know a lot of stuff, and it's kind of a joke, because not a joke, but a joke between friends. Like, when you kind of hit that dive master level, you're like, man, not everybody, but you're like, I'm a pro. They built me up to be this. I'm a professional.
I have a card. Look, it says my dive master on it. Yes, I know so much. Oh, I do. I know so much.
Yeah, and it's
About
not
nothing.
until I slowly started progressing into the technical world that I'm like, okay, there's things that I could do safer. I could be a little bit more prepared for the inevitable. I have not had. I've done some blackout drills, nothing like what you've had to do, but it's definitely, it's. So for me, I am a huge. It's one of those weird things that I wouldn't tell somebody else to go solo dive, or I'd say if you do, just make sure you're really prepared for it. So
Yeah.
would you promote solo diving,
Hmm,
or would you kind of like how would you go
it's a
about
good
that?
question. I mean, obviously we all do it, but would we promote it? I would say from a photographer's aspect, I probably take better pictures when I'm solo diving than I do when I'm out with friends like I was this morning. Because you're fighting over the same single subject you found to take a picture of, and yeah, I want to take it first. No, on you go, you go.
I mean, let's face it, a photographer is the very definition of a solo diver. And in fact, we all learn this right at the beginning. It's like, oh, wow, I'm advanced now, so I can take my paddy. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I can take my GoPro with me, and that's it. And look at me now. And then suddenly, every piece of diving knowledge you had has just disappeared. You just become appallingly poor at it as you crash into things.
There's nothing worse than a diver with a GoPro and a stick. And I know where I'd love to stuff that stick.
Yeah, and you just look at that, and of course, what improved my diving most at the beginning was leaving the damn thing at home. There's no question about it. But it's always, you often will see this with photographers, except for one guy who I remember just literally barged me out of the way because he wanted. I just happened to be hovering in front of something, completely still, loving it. It was just on it was a tank, as in a Valentine tank. It doesn't matter, and literally was just shoved to one side as he then knelt down, kicked up the silt, and was taking his photographs. That's like, oh my goodness, why?
Yeah. There's a thing called etiquette that
Yeah. Would you promote solo diving, Glenn?
Personally, it's I like and rate and do a lot of solo diving, and I think everybody should have the ability to solo dive, absolutely, which means that their skills are sufficient to look after themselves, and their problem-solving abilities are all there, and they're carrying the right kind of equipment that they can get themselves out of a problem. I absolutely promote all of that. So that's, if you like, I'm promoting self-reliance. Diving solo is a big difference from that because that often means that you're literally going to walk down to the place wherever you're going diving and you're going to go in the water yourself. It's you and only you who's responsible for things. And in some ways, that's the next step up from self-reliance. Now, would I suggest that to everyone? No. Sadly, I was on a boat with the guy who barged me out of the way a few years later. And this boat is an independent boat full of independent divers. We're doing a 45-metre dive, which is a classic sort of thing, which is 150 feet. Be a decompression dive, and that was that. And to cut the whole sad story short, I had an incredible dive. It was over 2 hours in the water with a twin set. I took two stages with me to do the decompression and everything. I heard some stuff going on above me. Afterwards, when I surfaced in front of a lifeboat, turned around and there's another lifeboat, turned around again and there's a helicopter. It's like, oh my goodness, what's happened here? And then fortunately saw my dive boat. Went back up and discovered he'd drowned. He'd literally, got into the water and didn't come out again. So that was that. Circumstances, we'll leave it there. Don't want to identify anyone with it, but it was desperately sad. Now, the lesson I learned from that tragic incident was it's absolutely your responsibility to make sure you have those skills. Nobody else is going to do this. And therefore, in some ways, you have to have a little bit more experience to understand that there's so much more that you don't understand. It's no good jumping in with you're advanced, it's brilliant, you can do anything. It's not that. This is something where you know that you can go through it. And that's basically my opinion, that everybody should have that kind of self-reliance on it. And certainly, if you rely on a buddy, that's great, but please bring a buddy. You have to look at that whole way of diving together. Anyway, sad but true.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not the type of stories you like to hear, but unfortunately things like that happen from time to time, and the best thing we could do is learn from those situations. And so I guess my next question would be, there are obviously agencies out there that I kind of think teach that self-reliance right off of the bat with redundancy, things like that. Do you, and I mean, I think I'm kind of answering my own question, but just throwing the question out there either way. Do you think that self-reliance should be taught very early on? Maybe not open water, but do you think that that's something that should be kind of drilled into students? Because I feel like there is a big push in a lot of recreational agencies, like it's all about the buddy system. Don't go out with your buddy. Absolutely. Until you hit certain level, then it's like, okay, now you're out on your own. But if we can push that self-reliancy, I feel like that would make, because when I took my open water course, there was, I don't know maybe if this is how I felt going into it, but I felt that there was a little bit of that push, like, yeah, your buddy's there for you when you need him, but you should be responsible for yourself. Like, no one's going to help you. But I feel like a lot of what I see is buddy, 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 and it's like, and then if your buddy doesn't catch something, it's kind of like the blame game at that point. I don't think it's really the blame game, but do you think that self-reliancy should be pushed a lot more in the beginning stages of scuba diving?
Yes, because you don't know who if you've got an Insta buddy, which happens obviously in a lot of boat situations, if you're traveling to exotic places, or going out in general. I don't know, I haven't dived in the UK for a while, but I always went with people that I knew, so that didn't occur. But when I started traveling, I was with Insta buddies, and I've had some disasters. I mean, like, who the hell ties their shoelaces in the morning? It's they jump in the water, and basically they flail around for half an hour, and then they've run out of air, and they have to surface. And you've got to surface with them because you're buddy, and you've still got over 100 bar in your tank, and you're thinking, what the hell did I just pay all this money for? And to look after an idiot. Yeah, there's that frustrates me a lot. So I have to go back to my initial dives in Thailand in the 90s, where even an instructor that was buddied with me ran out of air after 20 minutes, and I was. It was the first time I ever really saw anybody panic underwater. And number one, I asked, it was a German-run boat. It was a liveaboard for 3 days out of Phuket over to Similan Islands and back. And I asked this guy, I said, look, it's okay, I'm taking photographs. Can I solo dive? Because I'd already at that point done a fair bit of solo diving in the Red Sea. I lived in Jeddah for 12 years. So anyway, the guy says, no, I'll give you this guy. He's said something. I don't think he said he was an instructor. I found out later he was an instructor. I got down, I saw this nudibranch, and it was like the gold aura shining out of it, and God calling me, photograph me. So I was like, wow, I never seen a nudie like this before. So I was like all excited, started taking a couple of shots. Next thing, there's this tug in my shoulder, and the guy's giving me, I'm low on air, and I went, okay, you up. Fairly simple signal. I mean, and I went back round, where the hell's that nudie? Oh yeah, it's there. So get ready to take a photograph. Next thing, I'm being pulled around and he's grappling for my octopus and stuffing that in his mouth. And I thought, well, he didn't even give me an out of air. I mean, he said he was low on air by that sign. I told him to go up, and now we're both going up. And he was yelling at me in German and everything, and say, I'm telling you, I'm low on air. And I said, well, if you're low on air, you've still got air. You go up. I said, I told you to go up.
Yeah.
So, that really frustrated the hell out of me. Back on the boat, I complained to the guy that was running the boat. I says, look, please let me dive solo. And then this guy was wandering around the boat with an PADI instructor hat on. He'd only done about 100 dives. I think I had about 500 at that stage.
100 dives and an instructor.
But,
Wow.
This is Thailand. The zero to hero instruction, irrespective of who the agency is, it's like a factory. They churn out divers, and I don't know, they seem to be mainly European run from what I've seen. I mean, there's a lot of German divers there. They go there on holiday. Swedish.
It's possibly these people making a small fortune out of diving.
I don't know how anybody can make a fortune out of diving.
No. To make a small fortune out of diving, you first start with a large one.
Exactly.
And they're probably doing their retirement fund and everything. They're throwing their entire pension at it or whatever. I've always wanted to do this, and then you suddenly realise it's nothing like they said it was on the tin.
But this, you don't know what you don't know, and this is a big problem where they're churning out advanced open water divers in 10 dives and with limited experience, whether it be in the sea or in a big mucky pond in the middle of America or UK, a quarry. I've never dived in a quarry. Nothing in it appeals to me. I wouldn't mind just if they've got something interesting in it, but
it's practice, that's all. In fact, there was one in the UK which closed, unfortunately, but that had lots of very interesting stuff in there. Lots of military.
Was it Stony Cove
in there, which was great. No. Stony has various things, and it's good. That one was NDAC, the National Diving Activity Centre, which alas, unfortunately, is now closed. COVID killed it, but it was probably on, disappearing before then. But it did have 80 metres, which is 260 feet. So consequently, you could do Mod 2 and deep sort of tech training and things. And it was nice because you had this at one end of it, and then the other end it was a bit shallower and so on. And it was very, very good, and it's a real miss. As we're now really stuck, because when you need to do, for example, technical training, and you've got to, you need consistency with it and conditions, and so consequently you go down, say, to 60, 70 metres, whatever, and then you do your bailout, whatever it may be, and show that you can do the ascents and things, even on open circuit stuff, and that's it. Regarding solo, self-reliance and so on, I completely agree. I think that self-reliance should be absolutely taught at the beginning. However, it definitely depends on where the diving starts out. Now, in my particular case, it was Spain in the beginning. And of course the conditions are beautiful. You've got 30 metres of visibility, it's warm, it's non-tidal because it's the Mediterranean. It's, basically it's clean, nice, sunny weather. What's not to like? And of course it means that you've never really got particular problems. You don't, for example, you don't need a torch or anything like this. And there's no difficulties. There's also no wrecks around there. Anyway, the English Channel is just full of them, and I really mean full of them. It's just extraordinary. Literally thousands of wrecks we have along there, and that's the kind of thing that we dive. And this is where the self-reliance is. So for just doing a simple sort of tour around the reef with a dive master leading you around it off of a boat full of people, 60 feet or maybe even 100 feet, or it generally would never get to 100 feet because they would lead you around at those shallower depths and things, then kind of fine. But even so, right at the very, very beginning, I just hated the way that people would kick would just literally fin across the bottom and just kick everything about. And that's just horrible to see. And that was that. When you start diving in more challenging conditions, so this will be tidal conditions, maybe in cold water, and it's dark because you just have more muck in it with poorer visibility, that's where you've got to have your wits about you. And immediately, if you're sticking together with a buddy, and you're completely together with someone, you will lose them. That's what happens. Because unless you spend active time doing active buddy procedures, as would be taught by the likes of certain technical agencies, for example, using your torch, where you shine it down in front of the person in front of you with a spot beam, and they will then put their torch on top of yours, so you can actually see that person can see that he knows you're there, or she knows you're there. And of course they know that you're behind them, because a guy that I frequently dive with, I mean, he is that focker coming from behind, if you like. He always seems to want to dive just above and just behind me, so I can't see him. Even if I tuck my head under, I've literally got to turn around, and I don't do that very frequently. But it is this thing about active buddy skills that need to be done. Outside of that, you must be able to get over it, because when, again, early days diving on a wreck, swimming along quite happily, someone kicked something from above and suddenly, boom, out went all the visibility. And it's like, ooh, blimey, I can't see a thing, even my torch has disappeared. And so all you do is you stop. And you just slowly fin forwards. You might back fin, you might turn around. You know where it was and everything was, so you just sort of slowly move forwards with it. And then eventually you either touch something or you come out of it. But you have to have those skills to be able to do it in the first place. And quite honestly, core skills, finning, buoyancy, trim, all of these are things which are all part of self-reliance. Because if you suddenly just go to pieces when the visibility has disappeared, you're always going to have problems. Now, as I say, how can you train for that kind of thing if you live in, I don't know, fantasy diving locations, Hawaii or something like this, or, South Florida or something like this, where it's just lovely conditions all the time. I'm sorry for anyone in Florida. I've not dived there yet. I hope to shortly, but anyway. It is a big difference between that and, as I say, cold water. And then, of course, you've got wrecks. Wrecks are things which are very easy to sort of go inside. Little penetration, that's fine, no problems there. But again, you can't always go up, because there's often overhanging things above you. Easily done. And again, if you've only got 2 meters visibility, 3 meters visibility, so 6 to 10 feet visibility, then you can easily get sort of slightly caught. And so you have to be aware of, has the light changed around me? That kind of thing. Is my buddy still around if I have one? Where are they? And that's the kind of self-reliance that I would like to see, just as a natural part of diving. And I would guess that in the more challenging conditions that certain places have, maybe you would get that kind of training and natural sort of practice with it.
Yeah, and so I think too that's kind of why my whole thought process in the beginning was in Lake Travis we do have pretty low visibility. Like even when I was working underneath the water, a joke between me and the other working divers is we would call it diving by braille, because you don't see anything. As soon as you plant on the bottom, you're kicked up. Because I mean, literally, sometimes you're following a chain and you're pulling it up out of the mud to get where you're going. If you're trying to get to the anchor or whatever the water pump, whatever you need to do, and so you really just. So I got really comfortable with just closing my eyes. So when I did my blackout drill, that the closing my eyes or the blackout really didn't affect me as much as just kind of, my instructor was putting me through a little bit of a stress test. And then there was like this whole situation where my stress definitely got a little bit high, but then I'm just like, okay, just focus on your breathing. But then you're still trying to, handle all these other situations. So as far as me thinking, I don't know if I would teach a self-reliant at the very beginning in open water, but I definitely think it should be brought up in the advanced portion of
Hmm.
it. And right now I'm just thinking of recreational diving, because I have seen a lot of people. I've been an instructor for about 2020, so going on 3 years, and teaching some people, there's obviously different levels. Some people get things a lot quicker than others, but so obviously, I've seen students where it's like, okay, you need a lot more time in the water before we could even move you forward, whereas other students, take to it like a fish in water. But I definitely think it should be really pushed in the advanced class, just because open water, they're learning a lot of new skills. Granted, if the student takes to it really easy, then yeah, you can start to mention it. But just kind of have that buddy reliance. So it's kind of a tough one for me, because I'm like, oh, okay, I think it should be brought up in open water. I don't know if it should necessarily be taught.
We've got things like checklists, for example. Just take, for example, the check. So, sorry, this is where I go back to that incident I was speaking about earlier, and I was just thinking about gas, and I'd face my twin set, and I would, before it's untied, I would absolutely make sure that I turn the gas on, I breathe from both regulators, I check the gauge as well whilst I'm breathing, and you do that as an absolute matter of fact, and you know it's there. Similarly, you climb in, you untie it, you climb into it after you put your fins on and various other bits and pieces, and as you kit up, you put it on, you put the necklace on. I prefer the long hose, but you breathe from both. You absolutely must do that and check the gas again. Similarly, if you've also got to make sure that your dry suit's connected, so the dump is opened, and that you can actually inject some gas or whatever into it. Pre-jump. So this is just before, as you're sort of sitting there, you've been through all your checks and everything, you're happy with it. I always do a really short thing. It's left to right. It's really simple. Doesn't matter what you're diving, whether it's back mount, side mount, single, doubles, CCR even. It's like, is my dry suit open? Yes. Is my inject into my dry suit? Yes. Can I inject some BCD stroke wing gas in there? That's kind of proving that it's there. Checking, breathing from both, and again, check your gauges if they're there. Of course, it's slightly different on CCR, but it doesn't matter. You're making sure that you can read your on your wrist. You can actually see your oxygen levels on there. Is it turned on? That kind of thing. And then you do injections depending on which unit you've got. You just inject some oxygen and some diluent. What does that prove? It just proves the following: and you do this as well when you're standing at the gate of the boat, about to jump off. Hiss into the the BCD, breathe, check gauge, and that kind of thing. Right. What does this prove? It's very simple. I can, one, jump in and float, and two, I can breathe. Right. Everything else doesn't matter, because you can deal with that thing when you're there. Oh, I've forgotten my fins. Fine, okay. Who's not done that? It's like there's something missing. There's something missing. What is it? What is it? And then generally you'll notice it beforehand. And the other one is the world's so clear. I can see. Oh, it's my mask that's missing. You do get those things. But the point being is that if you don't do that tiny check, literally clear, hiss, and done. And breathe from these things, you can live on the surface, even though everybody's going to absolutely make mincemeat of you when you get back on the boat. They're all going to shout and point at you, and it's like maybe you'll learn a lesson at that point. Anyway, so that's the point about self-reliance. It's just going through these checks. Similarly, you get to the shot line. We generally dive in tide, but whatever. The shot line is the line down to the bottom onto the rack. And so you get ready to go down, you sort of start descending, you make sure that everything's okay as you're going, you look up and check that there's no bubbles or anything, does everything feel right? And then you continue down. When I get to the bottom of that, it's right, stop. It's stop time and it's me time, because what I want to do is I want to just go through everything that's there. So again, open water, this is making sure that your cylinders, if you've got any stage cylinders attached to you, they're all in the right place and they're floating around in the right way. Maybe sorting out your side mounting of it if you're doing that kind of thing to actually stabilise them. Making sure that your bailout is working, that there's gas in the thing, whatever it may be, all of these bits. And it's just like, that's your time, because if you don't check that, should something go wrong in the rest of the dive, you're going to be reliant upon that, and it could even be as much, okay, this is CCR, but doing a small bailout onto it, or even a full bailout, pull it around your head, done, and that's it. Now, when I was diving twin sets, or even a single, it doesn't matter, single diving, it's the same thing. You swap, you take out this one, your primary, and you scoop up the backup. Does that work? Yes. Well, great. So I've got gas. And that's what it is. And for the first time in my life, I dived somewhere and boom, this is amazing. In the Caribbean, we went away to the Caribbean last year. Oh, it was so delightful. And the place we went to it was so inclusive, this place, it even included scuba diving. So you go off. Okay, you have to put up with dive masters rattling away because, we will rattle you until, you're deaf. As they're doing it, and of course it's like you can dive to 18 meters, and so if you go to 19 meters, it's the rattles will start again, and that was that. But that aside, it's exactly the same thing. Before you jump off the boat, can I breathe? What does my gas say? That's it. From both of them. In the water, you swap it over. You just check that kind of thing as you jump off and you go down. And, same as, well, it's sort of less so when you get to the bottom of those, but it's still the same thing. You stabilise, sort out your buoyancy, make sure that you look super cool, and then off you go. No, it's just this thing that you're responsible for yourself. Nobody else should be. Now, buddy checks, for example, are fantastic things. Absolutely great. But come on, who's the buddy check for? It's not for your buddy, it's for you. You need to make sure that you go through this. So you're going through this thing and your buddy is checking you as you go through. So that's it. Now, selfish, yes. But that's what it's all about. As regards your buddy, oh, no. It's like, no, you, up, now. Go. Goodbye. Don't want to see you anymore. It's, anyway.
So I know we've kind of talked about it already, but so if someone was going to pursue solo, self-reliant, whatever we want to classify it as, what are essential pieces of gear you would highly, highly suggest for somebody to bring?
Right. Well, it depends on where they'll be diving, but let's just say it's going to be somewhere between 10 to 30 meters depth-wise. Definitely another cylinder, or a stage, call it what you want, or a pony bottle, which is another name for it. To me, they're all the same thing. I carry a 30 cubic foot. It works for me because I've got a low sack rate and I know I can swim around with that fairly easy. As part of my tech gear that I put 50% in. 40 cubic foot is probably, it's a bit more gas, nothing wrong with that. Some people could get away with smaller cylinders, but definitely another cylinder with regulator on it. Now, the way I dive is that I don't have an octopus. I've got a long hose and I carry a stage when I'm doing anything deeper than 10 meters. And I have a word with my buddy. Well, I've got regular buddies so they know me and we've practiced some scenarios. But I've got a couple of new people that I've been diving with over the past year. And I explained to them, look, if there's any problem, you're taking my regulator. I'll pull out my other reg and turn the gas on my stage and start to breathe from that. And then we'll see how things are. We're going up anyway. If anything's gone wrong, we're going to the surface, especially if they've run out of air. And maybe we'll swap over. So I will clip off the stage if they've got a suitable BC with D-rings on it. And then I'll take my own second stage back so that we're independent of each other and they're not hanging on to me. But yeah, so an alternate air source, i.e. another bottle of gas, is definitely essential. Spare mask, to be honest, I only carry it when I'm doing tech diving. I don't when I'm doing recreational diving. I don't know why. I used to at the beginning, but then I got lazy and I don't anymore. I do have several cutting instruments. I've got a ceramic blade that I carry on my computer strap. I moved to that last year. I was fed up replacing so-called stainless steel rusty blades every now and then. But Dive Right make a really nice ceramic one, so I replaced that this year. And I carry a knife. Rarely have to use it, but I can access on my computer here is obviously my right hand, but my knife I can access with both hands. It's serrated and it's got one of these cutting, you can get a line in there and cut through it type thing on the blade. Anything else? I would say a spare light. I carry 2 lights all the time. Usually one's on the camera and I have a soft Goodman handle with a light on that, and that works for me. But definitely not.
I was gonna say, I'm just curious. So why are you not using an alternate just because you have the extra bottle, the pony bottle or whatnot? Is that why you don't?
It's something less round my neck. I put an octopus on. I mean, I'll be going to Indonesia again in September, and my buddy, who I'm meeting there, she insists that I carry an alternate air source. Not that we've had to use it, but she got very nervous last year. First time I dived with her last year, and we met on Scubaboard, and we went diving together last year in Indonesia, and it was quite funny. She was like giving me a quick check. She says, "Where's your octopus?" I said, "I don't have an octopus." "What if I need gas?" "Oh, so do this, we'll buddy breathe. Once that's in my mouth," she says, "I won't be letting it go." But yeah, she's a scream.
Buddy breathing, one of the worst skills I've ever practiced. I hated that so much. Seriously. Yeah, so it's just literally, breath in, out, breath in, pass over,
Yeah, and then bubbles.
hold, hold, and take it back.
No, but you got to do it. I mean, we practiced a lot of that. I mean, it's just like when you're changing gas as well, when you're coming up. And again, it's something I think if you are going to carry an alternate gas supply, that you practice using it. And it's another thing, and it goes to the style of diving we do off the east coast of UAE here. Our first dive is generally 28, 30 meters, and the second dive is around about 20 meters. So I use 34% on my first dive and 40% on my second dive. It's just the way it gives us slightly longer NDLs. Everybody's on 32. So they get a shorter second dive, and me and a couple of other buddies are always last on the boat. First off, last on. But when we're doing the deep dive at the beginning, frequently, even though we're not in deco, we'll just change over to 50% from 21 meters and carry on up to, and it's just good practice changing gas underwater.
Absolutely agree with that. I mean, certainly the biggest challenge, I think, with redundancy, and especially gas and everything else, is just when you start diving, the whole concept of taking the regulator out of your mouth and then putting this soaking wet regulator in and then breathing from it, it just fills you with horror. Everyone would have felt that way. Of course, you learn to purge it and everything else, and it's repetition makes you realise how straightforward it is, and it then becomes second nature to be able to do it. But practicing using a pony cylinder is absolutely vital. And I must admit there's certain configurations of pony cylinders which I personally just really do question. So it's the 3 litre pony next to the 15 litre main cylinder. So this is what, 105, I think 105, I think it is, cubic feet main cylinder, and then this small 3 litre one, someone help me here, which would contain 600 litres of air divided by, I'll get there in a minute. But anyway, the small pony cylinder. The problem with it is it's on your back, and of course you can't get to the things to actually tweak it. So was it turned on? How do you prove it's turned on? Because some people I've seen it bungeed back. So how do you get the thing out? Well, you've got it out now and you can breathe it. How do you put it back again? So therefore it does not encourage you to go and practice with the thing. And so on. And similarly, with if you're carrying these other ones, please check it in the water. You've got to make that natural. It's just the same for bailing out on a rebreather. Rebreathers, you carry a stage cylinder, and it's got sufficient gas of the right type and so on. And you should practice this all the time. When I had a full-on bailout, and I had to bail out to this thing because I had a caustic cocktail on the thing, which is one of the absolute, that's it is dead, no more. So therefore you just simply say, ooh, and my mind suddenly changed from this whole sort of trying to solve the problem into caustic cocktail, bail out now, bang, that was it. Pull it forwards, bring it around, off, down, in your mouth. Oh, that's better. I'm alive. And now I can continue to the surface. And okay, I had some decompression obligation, so I got another cylinder. But whatever. The point being is that it's perfectly natural. And if it's the first time you've ever done it, it's scary as anything. And you have to do that. So certainly practice these things. I think regarding kit that you take, because I tend to do more technical diving, meaning that I do decompression type things, and even a 30 meter, 100 foot dive, you do it on 30 minutes on air. On 32% or 20 minutes on air. I'll do it for 75 minutes, and then I'll do 25-30 minutes of decompression and be done with it. So it just works out for me, because I can't see the point of jumping off a boat and then trying to be back in time for, to stand around waiting for them to motor to the next side. No, I'd sooner have a deeper, longer dive and be done with it. As a result of that, it's you tend to take all the standard kit. So in the right pocket there'll be a spare mask, my spare SMB, a real wet nose. In the left one I'll have spare other stuff, spare knives and things. And then you've got around you other bits and pieces which you need to just make sure work. So of course spare gas, obviously. And it's this old thing of same with computers. So you've got a computer on this side. If it's deep and long, you take another one, because the computer is essential to manage your decompression. So you need 2 computers for that kind of thing. If something's really important, then you take 3. So for example, if you're going down for a deeper dive, and it's dark and going to be dark, then how many lights are you going to take with you? It's do you take more than that? And of course, this goes back to cave diving and such like. You do 3 lights that you take at least. As a minimum there. Many sort of British cave divers will wear a helmet full of head torches and things. But that's another one. So that's basically it. So if it's important, you take 2. So cutting devices, I'd say that they're essential. So on both of your computers or whatever, you've got those, plus other places like on your belt. Take 3. Why not? It means nothing to sort of bring all of these. I think skills-wise, going back to people sort of just starting out, open water and additional open water, which is often called advanced open water, but that additional open water gives you the additional skills that you're going to be doing. Then you move on to doing probably, and so, sorry to just use Paddy's example, I went through that. Paddy's best course, in my humble opinion, is the rescue diver, because what that does is it teaches you about thinking about other people, not just about yourself. It's like, ooh, it's all about me, and everybody's mollycoddling you, and sort of helping you out on the boat. Oh, are you okay now? Would you like me to sort of help you on with this? Suddenly rescue is about helping others. And that also then starts to teach you to start to think about what can go wrong. And then you have to, it's the next logical step, and it's only a small one, which says, ooh, what if I'm on my own, stuck in a bit of a wreck or something like this, and something goes wrong? What can I do about it? So, can I just go, boom, hurtling straight to the surface? Well, no. Often you can't. You've got to make sure that you're all sorted out and you can do things. And that's where rescue really comes in. And it's practice, but core skills. Make sure they work.
Yeah, no, actually, now that you're bringing it up, definitely rescue should definitely be. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure for the like I said, I have not taken the class, but the self-reliant or solo dive, isn't there like a minimum you
Correct.
have to be rescue and then up to like 100 dive? Or I'm not exactly sure okay.
Just a quick note in that. It's interesting that to do self-reliant dive or solo dive with SDI, it's 100 dives. Interestingly, to be a dive master, you need 60 dives. I'm just saying, but the point being is that...
Is that with SDI?
No, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I know that some places it's 60 dives. I know it's impossible to become a dive master with 60 dives, but the point being is that to start it off, you have, which most of us would consider no knowledge or very, very little knowledge, and very, very little experience, and certainly a lot of different conditions and things, to start things off. And that's the whole thing about this. It's seeing different conditions.
Thank you very, very much for coming on. And like I said, this is the first of hopefully many roundtable discussions, and I hope to have you guys back on. Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.